With the Democratic Alliance that's expected to argue that parts of the Employment Equity Amendment Act are unconstitutional. Its High Court challenge gets underway in Tshwane this morning. The party claims that the Labour minister has unchecked powers to set sector targets. It believes those powers will prevent the creation of jobs. Newzroom Afrika senior political reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo, following the story, joins us now from the court. Ziyanda, good morning. We've seen Helen Zille already talking about this morning. What are we expecting to happen in court?
Well, Stephen, I can tell you that the Labour Department is also going to mount its own argument that the DA cannot claim that the minister has unchecked powers. Firstly, because even when this law was being crafted, the amendment rather, of the Employment Equity Act, they consulted with the Employment Equity Commission. The minister also, the law does state that the minister, when setting targets, also has to undergo consultation. So in the first instance, there's no unchecked power. But secondly, that the DA is against transformation that has been seen through, the burgeoning of a black middle class that didn't even exist before 1994. So these are some of the arguments that they're going to make, and an explanation from them about how they actually reached this point. That section 15A that the Democratic Alliance is saying the minister must prove that the discrimination currently is fair discrimination as outlined in the Constitution. I can tell you as well, Stephen, that outside the court there will also be some supporters, those in solidarity with the Labour Department and the ANC. And I'm going to bring in one of those who's already here, Ziyanda Ngcobo, who's here. Let's talk about why you believe you want to come and listen to what's going to be said in court today.
First and foremost, the idea of labor for us is an old idea, because we know that historically, even from apartheid, the hewers of wood and the packers of soil were always those that were the working class. And what we have here is a political party which has never moved on from the fact that the state should be actually controlled by those that work it. And now what we see here is first and foremost an affront and a clear discrimination against democratic values of saying that the working people and that what should they get should be appropriate to the labor that they put in. And so we have an organization, which is the Democratic Alliance, which is against transformation. And this is nothing else but an attack, first and foremost, on the democratic principles of South Africa. That you would know, historically, the ANC in the Freedom Charter clearly and explicitly states that we should abolish the tort system. There shall be equal work for equal pay, and that things that did not exist back then for working people, they now exist. What do I mean by this? Your maternity leaves, the amendments of your Labor Relations Act, and now the DA makes an argument that no, a process of actually making it palatable for black people to enter the job market is actually a discriminative purpose. We think that as members of the ANC and as young people who are burdened by the crisis of unemployment, this is not just an attack on the state itself. It cannot be just left to the state. It must also be entered through by progressive trade unions, progressive civil society, because...
Yeah, speaking of progressive trade unions, let me jump in there. You've got a COSATU, you've got a Labour Federation, you've got an alliance, but many would argue that that alliance is weak and actually doesn't have as much influence as the DA has now in the government of national unity, no?
No, it's not true. I would not speak for my leadership, because my leadership is going to come and clarify whatsoever. But Tina, as picketers, as people who believe that there's nothing wrong with what the Minister of Labour is doing. In fact, the Employment Equity Act is not reverse racism. If anything, Employment Equity Act is something that all progressive South Africans should uphold, because what it does, it is guaranteeing fairness in that where black people never used to get employment access before, chances of doing business with government, it must now be distributed to those that historically have not been benefiting before. So what we see here, we see a DA which is rooted on white supremacy and racism, which is trying to reverse back the gains of democratic racism. We're saying no, we're not saying that we're going to agree with the DA. DA, it must actually, and maybe it's about time that the ANC, NEC really sits down and looks at this issue of the DA, because you can't want to have your cake and eat it at the same time. They must choose whether they are opponents or they are government. But we are saying, as protesters of the ANC, we don't agree with what the DA is doing, and we'll be here to support the minister and we'll be here to support the ANC.
All right, Nkamvelihle Ngcobo is here. He'll be also, watching closely those proceedings, a young person in the ANC, talking about the importance of the Employment Equity Amendment Act and its actual existence and what it personally means for him and the movement that he forms part of. So 10 o'clock, Stephen Curtis, is when court proceedings get underway and those arguments will be laid bare before the court.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, thanks very much indeed. Part of